I thought my 33-year marriage was rock solid until that Tuesday evening when she spoke 7 words that changed everything. What my wife confessed shattered not just my trust, but my entire reality. Could our family survive a secret this devastating? And was the life I'd built nothing but an illusion? Some betrayals cut deeper than others. My name is Russell Burke. I'm 58 years old, and this is my story. Sandra and I met in college. She wasn't the type to turn heads when she walked into a room, but there was something about her quiet confidence that drew me in. We dated for 3 years before I proposed, and we were married 6 months later in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. Edward was my best man, my buddy since high school who'd seen me through every major milestone in my life. I remember standing at the altar, watching Sandra walk toward me, thinking I was the luckiest guy in the world. In many ways, I still believe that. We built a good life together. A comfortable home in the suburbs of Portland, 2 healthy children, family vacations to the coast every summer. The American dream, right? Austin came along in our 3rd year of marriage, followed by Emily 2 years later. They were good kids, never gave us much trouble, did well in school, grew into adults we were proud of. Now Austin's an engineer in Seattle, and Emily teaches elementary school in Bend. They visit when they can, but they've got their own lives now. As it should be. For 33 years, Sandra and I settled into a comfortable routine. Not exciting, maybe, but solid. Reliable. I worked hard at the office. She volunteered at the community center. We had dinner together most nights and watched our shows afterward. On weekends, I'd putter around the garage while she tended her garden. We had our friends, our hobbies, our traditions. It wasn't perfect. No marriages. We had our arguments, our stale periods, times when we felt more like roommates and spouses. But we weathered all, or so I thought. I never once considered walking away. That's not how I was raised. You make a commitment, you honor it. Through better or worse, right? I thought we were on the same page about that. I thought we'd grow old together, sitting on our porch swing, watching the neighborhood kids play like we used to watch our own. I thought we'd beaten the odds in a world where marriages crumble over the smallest inconveniences. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And I never saw it coming. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I just finished mowing the lawn and was nursing a cold beer on the patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Sandra came outside, holding 2 glasses of wine. Unusual for a weeknight, but I didn't think much of it. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice oddly formal. I nodded, taking the glass she offered. "Everything okay?" She sat across from me, not next to me like she normally would. Red flag number 1. I suppose, if I'd been paying attention. "Russell," she said, using my full name instead of Russ. Red flag number 2. "There's something I need to tell you." I set my beer down, suddenly alert. "What's wrong? Is it the kids?" No, they're fine." She stared into her wine, swirling it slowly. "It's about us." My heart thudded against my ribs. "Are you sick?" "No, I'm not sick." She took a deep breath, then finally looked me in the eye. "After 33 years, I finally need to tell you the truth. And what happens next might be unbelievable." The world narrowed to just her face, everything else fading away. "What truth?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't faithful to you early in our marriage." The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. The only sound was the distant laughter of neighbor kids playing in a sprinkler. "What?" My voice didn't sound like my own. I had an affair. Each word fell like a stone. It wasn't just once. It went on for a while. The beer in my stomach soured. How long is a while? Almost a year and a half. She wiped a tear from her cheek. During our 2nd and 3rd year of marriage. Our 2nd year. Right when we were trying to get pregnant with Austin. The thought hit me like a freight train. "With who?" I demanded, even as part of me didn't want to know. Sandra's lips trembled. She took another sip of wine, stalling. "Who, Sandra?" She set down her glass and looked at me with those familiar brown eyes that suddenly seemed to belong to a stranger. "Edward." One word, for syllables that demolished 33 years of my life. "Edward." I echoed stupidly. "My Edward. My best friend Edward." She nodded, more tears falling. "Edward Marsh. The guy who helped me move into my first apartment. Who stood beside me at our wedding. Who was godfather to our son. Who still came over for poker every other Friday night." My thoughts spun wildly. Edward had been in our lives forever. He'd watched our kids grow up. He'd helped me build the deck we were sitting on right now. Russell, please say something, Sandra whispered. But what was there to say when your entire world turns out to be built on quicksand? When the woman you've loved for over 3 decades drops a bomb that obliterates everything you thought you knew. I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. Where are you going? Sandra asked, panic edging into her voice. Anywhere but here, I said, and walked away from the ruins of my marriage. I found myself driving aimlessly through familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. My neighborhood, the place I called home for decades, might as well have been another planet. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. After an hour of driving, I parked at Riverfront Park, the same park where I taught Austin to throw a baseball and pushed Emily on the swings. I sat on a bench overlooking the water, watching the current flow by, wishing it could carry away the thoughts thundering through my head. Sandra and Edward. Edward and Sandra. The 2 people I trusted most, betraying me behind my back. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Sandra, calling for the 3rd time. I declined it and stared at my background photo. Our family at Christmas last year, everyone smiling. Was it all fake? A dark thought slithered into my mind. Austin was born 9 months after our 3rd anniversary, right after Sandra's affair supposedly ended. I dialed Sandra. She answered immediately. Russell, thank God. Where are they mine? I cut her off, my voice deadly calm. Silence on the other end. Too long of silence. What? She finally whispered. Our children, I said, each word precise. Are they mine? Another pause. My heart hammered against my ribs. Russell, please come home. We need to talk about this face to face. Answer the question, Sandra. She sighed, a broken sound. Austin is yours. I'm certain. Emily. I don't know. The world tilted beneath me. I gripped the bench to steady myself. You don't know. I repeated flatly. The timing. It could be either of you. But Russell, it doesn't matter. You're her father. You've always been her father. I laughed, a harsh sound that scared a nearby duck into flight. It doesn't matter? 33 years of lies don't matter? Finding out my daughter might not be mine doesn't matter. That's not what I meant. I raised her, I said, my voice breaking slightly before I reined it in. I was there for every skin knee, every school play, every heartbreak. And now you're telling me she might be Edward's. Russell, did he know? The question burst out of me. Did Edward know he might be Emily's father all these years? Her hesitation told me everything. I'll be back later, I said, and hung up. I sat there as darkness fell, the park emptying around me. My entire life felt like a cruel joke. The happy marriage, the beautiful family, all built on a foundation of lies. My phone buzzed again. Not Sandra this time, but Emily. My sweet Emily with her mother's eyes and no, not my stubborn chin. Maybe Edward's chin. I let go to voicemail. What would I say to her? How could I look at her now without wondering? As night settled fully around me, I made a decision. I can run from this. That wasn't who I was. I'd faced every other challenge in my life head on, and I'd face this one too. Whatever came next, I would handle it with the same strength and integrity I'd always prided myself on. I owe myself that much. I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected, and walked back to my car. It was time to confront Edward. Edward lived in a renovated Victorian on the east side, the kind of place a successful bachelor could afford. As I pulled up, I noticed his porch light was on. Waiting for me, no doubt. Sandra had called him. Good. Let him sweat. I took my time walking up the steps, each footfall heavy with 3 decades of betrayal. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately. Edward stood there, looking older than I remembered. He'd always been the handsome one between us, but tonight he looked haggard, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. Russell, he said, his voice unnaturally calm. Come in. I brushed past him into the living room I'd helped him furnish years ago. The painting above his fireplace had been a housewarming gift from Sandra and me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Would you like a drink? He asked. I'd like the truth, I replied, turning to face him. All of it. He nodded, gesturing toward the leather sofa. I remained standing. I assume Sandra told you, he said, about how you were screwing my wife behind my back. Yeah, she mentioned it. He winced. I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse. My hands clenched into fists, but I kept them at my sides. I wasn't there to throw punches. I was there for answers. How long were you planning to keep this from me? I demanded. Edward sank into an armchair, suddenly looking every bit of his 63 years. I never planned to tell you. It was in the past. Over and done with. Over and done with. I let out a harsh laugh. You think something like this has an expiration date? No, that's not what I meant. He ran a hand through his graying hair. What happened between Sandra and me? It was a mistake. The biggest of my life. Why? I asked, the question that had been burning in me since Sandra's confession. Why her? Why my wife? Edward looked at the floor. I was in a bad place after Diane left me. Sandra was there, listening, supporting me. One thing led to another. Save the excuses. I cut him off. You were my best friend. You stood up at my wedding. I know. His voice was barely audible. Did you know about Emily? The question escaped before I could stop it. His head snapped up, eyes wide. What about Emily? The surprise in his expression seemed genuine, but I'd thought I knew this man. Clearly, I've been wrong before. Sandra isn't sure who Emily's father is, I said, watching his reaction carefully. It might be you. All color drained from his face. That's not possible. We were careful, and it ended months before. Apparently not. I interrupted. The timing fits. Edward stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. Russell, I swear to you, I had no idea. If I'd thought for 1 second. You'd what? I challenged. Come clean. Suddenly develop a conscience after 30 years. He stopped, shoulders slumped in defeat. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I studied him. This man I trusted, who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way. Part of me wanted to hate him, to break something valuable in his pristine house, to make him hurt like I was hurting. But the larger part of me was just tired. Tired of lies, of revelations, of having my world turned upside down. I'm getting a DNA test, I said finally. We'll know for sure if she's yours or mine. Edward nodded, looking shell-shocked. Whatever you need, Russell. I don't need anything from you, I replied, heading for the door. Not anymore. As I walked out, I felt oddly calm. Whatever came next, I would face it on my terms. Not Sandra's. Not Edward's. Mine. I drove around for another hour after leaving Edward's house, my mind churning with too many thoughts to face going home. Eventually, I found myself pulling into my brother Alan's driveway. Alan and I had never been particularly close. 5 years my junior, he'd always walked a different path. Unmarried, focused on his career, moving from city to city. But he'd moved back to Portland 3 years ago after a health scare, and we'd been trying to rebuild our relationship. The porch light flicked on before I reached the front door. Alan appeared in the doorway, eyebrows raised at my unexpected visit. Russell? Everything okay? One look at my face told him everything he needed to know. Come in, he said, stepping aside. Beer's in the fridge. That was Alan, never one to push for details. He'd wait until I was ready to talk. I grabbed a beer and collapsed on his leather couch, staring blankly at the sports highlights playing on his muted TV. Alan sat in the adjacent armchair, patient as always. Finally, I spoke. Sandra cheated on me. Alan's eyes widened slightly. Recently? No. A long time ago. I took a long pull from my beer. With Edward. Jesus, Alan muttered. Your best friend Edward. I nodded grimly. For over a year, early in our marriage. Alan absorbed this, his expression darkening. That son of a... It gets worse. I interrupted. Emily might not be mine. The ensuing silence was deafening. Alan and Emily had always been close. He was her favorite uncle, the one who taught her to ski, who helped her pick out her first car. What are you going to do? He finally asked. DNA test. What else can I do? Alan leaned forward. I meant about Sandra. I stared at my beer bottle, peeling off the label with my thumbnail. I don't know. You can stay here as long as you need, he offered. The simple kindness nearly broke me. I blinked hard, fighting back emotions I wasn't ready to face. Thanks, I managed. Alan nodded, then stood. Guest room's made up. Towels in the bathroom. We can talk more tomorrow, if you want. As he headed for his bedroom, he paused. For what it's worth, Russ, you're Emily's father. Biology be damned. After he left, I sat alone in his living room, letting his words sink in. Emily had my temperament, my love of classic rock, my terrible singing voice that we joked about. She called every Sunday, without fail. When she graduated college, she'd wrap me in a bear hug and whispered, "I did it for you, Dad." Was all of that invalidated by DNA? By acts committed before she was even born? I thought about Sandra's tearful face as I left, Edward's shocked expression when I mentioned Emily might be his. The life I'd built, suddenly balanced on a knife's edge. I'd always prided myself on being a man of principle, someone who faced challenges head-on, who didn't run from hard truths. Now I was being tested like never before. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't let anyone else define what family meant to me. Not Sandra, not Edward, not even a DNA test. That decision, at least, will be mine alone. After a restless night at Alan's, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of my phone buzzing. 7 missed calls from Sandra, 3 from Emily, and a text from Austin asking if everything was okay. I couldn't avoid them forever. I showered, borrowed one of Alan's shirts, and steeled myself for what came next. "I'm heading out," I told Alan, who was reading the newspaper at his kitchen counter. "Thanks for the refuge." He nodded. "You know where to find me if you need it again." Instead of going home, I drove to a quiet cafe downtown and called Austin first. He answered immediately. "Dad, what's going on?" "Mom's freaking out. Emily's worried sick." "I need to see you both." I interrupted. "Can you come to Portland this weekend?" A pause. "This is serious, isn't it?" "Yes," I said simply. "But not a health issue, if that's what you're worried about." "I'll drive down Friday night," he promised. "Wanted to call Em." "I'll handle it," I said. "Thanks, son." Next, I called Emily. Her voice was tight with worry. "Dad, where are you?" "Mom won't tell me what's happening." "I'm okay," I assured her. "But there's something we need to discuss as a family. Can you come home this weekend?" "Austin's coming." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "I'll leave after school Friday." After hanging up, I finally called Sandra. Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying all night. "Russell," she breathed. "Thank God. Where are you?" "At Alan's," I said. "I've called the kids. They're coming this weekend." Silence. "Then, you're going to tell them?" "They deserve the truth." "Russell, please. This isn't just about us anymore, Sandra." I cut in. "If Emily might be Edward's daughter, she has a right to know." More silence. "Then what about us? Our marriage?" The question hung between us like a weight. What about our marriage? 33 years, most of them good. Was I ready to throw that away? "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I need time." "I understand," she said softly. Will you come home before the kids arrive?" I thought about the house we'd shared for decades, the bed we'd slept in side by side. Could I face that now? "I'll be there Friday morning," I decided. "We need to be united when we talk to them, whatever happens afterward." "Thank you," she whispered. After we hung up, I sat in the cafe for a long time, watching people come and go. Regular people with regular problems, none of them facing the collapse of their entire reality. I thought about Austin, steady and pragmatic like me. About Emily, passionate and creative, with a laugh that could light up a room. My children. Whatever a DNA test might say about Emily, she was my daughter in every way that mattered. But knowing that didn't erase the decades of deception. Didn't erase the fact that Edward might have biological claim to the young woman I'd raised as my own. As I finally stood to leave, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The weekend would bring hard conversations and painful truths, but facing them head-on was the only way forward, the only way to eventually find solid ground again. Whatever came next, I would weather it. I always had. Friday evening arrived with a tension that seemed to permeate every corner of our house. Austin had arrived first, giving me a firm handshake that turned into a quick hug. Emily came an hour later, her smile faltering when she sensed the atmosphere. Now we sat in the living room, the 4 of us arranged like strangers at a business meeting. Sandra perched on the edge of the armchair, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I took the opposite chair, leaving the couch for our children. "You're scaring us," Emily said, breaking the silence. "Is someone sick? Dying?" I shook my head. "Nothing like that." Austin studied both our faces. "Then what is it?" I glanced at Sandra. We'd agreed I would lead this conversation, but I wanted to give her a chance to start if she preferred. Her slight nod told me to proceed. "Your mother has something to tell you," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Something that affects all of us." All eyes turned to Sandra. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. 33 years ago, she began, I made a terrible mistake. I had an affair. The silence that followed was deafening. Austin's expression hardened, while Emily's eyes widened in shock. With who? Austin asked, his engineer's mind immediately seeking details. Sandra's eyes briefly met mine before answering. With Edward. Uncle Edward. Emily's voice rose in disbelief. Your best friend, Dad? I nodded grimly. How long? Austin's question cut through the room like a knife. About 1.5 years, Sandra admitted. Early in our marriage. Emily shook her head, processing. Then her eyes snapped to mine. Wait, when exactly did this happen? The question I've been dreading. I clear my throat. Around the time your mother became pregnant with you. Her face drained of color as the implication hit her. Are you saying? I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. We don't know for certain, Emily. That's why I wanted you both here. I've scheduled DNA tests for next week. Austin swore under his breath, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so like mine it made my chest ache. Let me get this straight, he said, voice tight with controlled anger. Mom cheated with Uncle Edward 33 years ago, and now you're saying Emily might be his daughter? And you just finding this out now? Sandra wiped a tear from her cheek. I never told your father about the affair until this week. I should have. It was selfish and wrong of me to keep it from him. Emily stood abruptly. I need some air. Emily, please. Sandra reached for her. Don't. Emily backed away. Just don't touch me right now. I rose to follow her, but Austin caught my arm. Let her go, Dad. She needs space. The look on my son's face, a mixture of anger, confusion, and concern, reminded me powerfully of myself. No DNA test needed there. What happens now? He asked quietly. A question I've been asking myself for days. What happens now? We take the tests, I said firmly. We get the truth, and then we figure out how to move forward. Together. Austin's gaze shifted between Sandra and me. I met his eyes directly. I don't know, son, but whatever happens, you and Emily will always be my children. Nothing changes that. The week between the family meeting and the DNA test was the longest of my life. Emily returned home that night after a few hours alone, her eyes red but her chin lifted defiantly. She and Sandra barely spoke, while Austin took on the role of reluctant mediator. I moved into the guest room, not out of spite, but because I needed space to think. Each night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying 33 years of memories with new context. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear. We'd made separate appointments at the testing facility to avoid awkwardness. Mine was first, followed by Emily's, then Sandra's for verification. The nurse was professionally detached as she swabbed the inside of my cheek, sealed the sample, and sent me on my way. Results in 3 business days, she said, handing me a pamphlet. 3 days to learn whether the daughter I'd raised for 33 years shared my DNA. I waited in the parking lot until I saw Emily arrive. She noticed my car, but proceeded inside without acknowledging me. That hurt more than I expected. When she emerged 20 minutes later, I was still there. She hesitated, then walked to my window. You didn't have to wait, she said. I wanted to. I replied. You okay? She shrugged. Been better. Emily. I began. I'm still processing, Dad. She cut me off. I need time. I nodded, respecting her boundaries, even as my heart ached to comfort her. For what it's worth, she added, whatever that test says, you raised me. That counts for something. It counts for everything, I replied earnestly. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I've got to go. Work. I'll call when the results come in. She nodded and walked to her car. I watched her drive away, struck by how adult she'd become. Whatever happened next, I was proud of the woman she'd grown into. 3 days stretched into an eternity. Austin called daily, checking in on all of us. Sandra and I maintained a careful distance at home, speaking only when necessary. I spent most of my time in the garage, restoring an old motorcycle I bought years ago and never finished. The focused work kept my hands busy and my mind relatively quiet. When the call finally came Thursday afternoon, I was elbow deep in engine grease. I cleaned my hands hastily and answered, Mr. Burke, this is Dr. Winters from Pacific Genetics. My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes, your results are in. Would you like me to give them to you over the phone, or would you prefer to come in? The phone is fine. I couldn't wait another minute. Very well. A pause, the rustling of papers. Based on the samples provided, there is a 99.8% probability that you are Emily Burke's biological father. The relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. You're certain? Yes, sir. The test is conclusive. After hanging up, I sat in the garage for a long time, emotions washing over me in waves. Relief, primarily, but also lingering anger at the deception that had made the test necessary in the first place. And something else, a sense of validation. Emily was mine. Biology confirmed what my heart had always known. Now came the harder question. What about Sandra? Could our marriage survive this breach of trust? Did I want it to? I didn't have those answers yet. But at least one piece of my shattered world had been restored. It was a start. I called Emily first with the news. Her relief was audible, a shaky breath followed by quiet tears. I never really doubted it, she said. Not deep down. Me neither. I replied, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Next was Austin, who responded with a simple, I knew it, Dad. You two are like twins sometimes. I waited until evening to talk to Sandra. She was in the garden, deadheading roses as the sun set. Some things didn't change, even when everything else had. The results came back, I said, standing at the edge of her carefully tended flower bed. Emily is mine. She closed her eyes briefly. I never truly doubted it. But you weren't certain. She set down her pruning shears. No, I wasn't. We stood in silence, the weight of 33 years of deception between us. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I finally said. About us. About what happens next. Sandra looked at me, her expression a mixture of hope and resignation. And I took a deep breath. I can't just walk away from 33 years. But I also can't pretend this didn't happen. What are you saying, Russell? I'm saying I need more time. And space. I found an apartment near the office. 1-year lease. Her eyes widened. A year. To start. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, Sandra. But I'm willing to try. With counseling. With time apart, and then time together. With complete honesty from here on out. She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. That's more than I deserve. Maybe, I acknowledged. But it's what I need. What we both need, if there's any chance of salvaging this marriage. And Edward. He's out of our lives. Completely. That's non-negotiable. She nodded again, accepting my terms without argument. As I turned to go back inside, she called after me. Russell. I paused. Thank you. For not giving up entirely. I looked back at her, this woman I'd loved for most of my life. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because walking away completely would be easier. And I've never been one to take the easy path. She smiled sadly. I know. It's one of the many reasons I've always loved you. I didn't say it back. Not yet. Those words would need to be earned again, over time. But for the first time since her confession, I felt a flicker of possibility that someday I might feel them again. A year can change everything. Or nothing. Or something in between. My year in the apartment near downtown was both the hardest and most valuable of my life. At 58, I found myself living alone for the first time since college. No wife's breathing beside me at night. No family routine to structure my days. It was disorienting, then liberating, then simply educational. I learned I enjoyed cooking for myself, experimenting with recipes I'd never tried before. I discovered I preferred reading on the balcony at sunrise rather than before bed. Small revelations that helped me understand who Russell Burke was when stripped of the role of husband. Sandra and I started with weekly counseling sessions. Awkward, painful hours where we excavated decades of assumptions and unspoken expectations. We talked more honestly in those sessions than we had in years of marriage. Gradually, we added dinner dates, movies, weekend lunches, getting to know each other again as individuals, not just partners in a long-established routine. Emily took longer to forgive her mother, but by Christmas, they were speaking regularly again. Austin, ever the pragmatic one, maintained relationships with both of us with minimal drama. Edward moved away. Seattle, I heard. I didn't care enough to confirm. 10 months into my lease, Sandra asked if I considered coming home. I have. I admitted over dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. Almost daily. And Her eyes held both hope and fear. "I'm not the same man who left," I said carefully. "I'm not sure I can go back to who we were before." "I don't want that," she replied. "I want who we could be now. Honest, equal, present." I studied her face, the familiar lines around her eyes, the curve of her smile, the gray threading through her hair. Still beautiful to me, despite everything. "We need new ground rules," I said. "A new understanding." She reached for my hand across the table. "Whatever it takes." 2 weeks later, I let my lease expire. Moving back wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a new beginning. Hard-earned and clear-eyed. Emily called the day after I moved home. "Are you happy, Dad?" "Happy enough," I answered honestly. "Getting happier. That's all any of us can ask for," she said wisely. She was right. At 59, I'd learned that happiness isn't a destination. It's a series of choices made day after day. Choosing forgiveness over bitterness. Growth over stagnation. Truth over comfort. I didn't know what the future held for Sandra and me. But for the first time in a long while, I was eager to find out.